This is Talk is Sheep, a podcast by the Wild Sheep Society of British Columbia. Come along as we take conversations that matter to you into the high alpine.
Mr. Steve Hamilton.
Mr. Kyle Stelter. It's raining here. Last time we talked, it was sunny, but well, here we are, first day of summer, and that's what happens, right?
Highly appropriate.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it'll make for good habitat, and everything will grow with big horns and big whatever antlers, and it'll be a good year for hunters in the field. Maybe
my dog was going nuts yesterday. And she ran up against the fence and like, what the hell are you doing? And this mule deer popped out of the ditch. That was just a monster. He's out past his ears already and a couple inches high. And of course he's a town deer. So he knows where he's safe, but inside our jurisdiction, you can actually hunt with a bow. So where he went was right across the road into a little bit of Crown property, but no way he's going to stick around. But yeah, so
crazy. Yeah, pretty cool. So I know we're recording this in June, but releasing early July. So less than a month to sheep season, about a month to the Jurassic. It's all happening, man.
It is. And month of sheep season. So, well, God, that means I got to get into shape for next year.
Yeah.
I'm not going on any hunts, so.
Yeah, I've got a September hunt, and I've just started kind of getting out now, throwing the pack on. I had 38 pounds yesterday. I did 43 this morning, and as soon as I get off this cast, I'm going to go jump up the mountain. Me and my son are going to go hike up and get some cardio. And I'm not even going to throw a pack in on this one. I'm just going to get up the mountain. So
because you don't want your son running past you, is what it is.
Oh, give me a! Are you kidding me? These kids are machines. They're absolutely
they are. Absolutely, they are. Where are you going to go? Where's there a mountain in Victoria?
Yeah, Mount Finlayson. It's I don't know what the elevation is. It's not that big, but it's probably, if you're in great shape, you're up in about 40 minutes. So it's a serious elevation game there, and it's a bit technical. There's some spots where you're scrambling like on all fours and stuff to make it work. So it's actually a pretty good grind. Unfortunately, it's about a 30-minute drive, but do it once a week or whatever.
I'm just looking at it on Google Earth. Like that's 30 minutes from you.
Yeah.
Oh, good God. Traffic sucks then, eh?
Well, it's not bad. It's just town driving, right? It's not congestion. It's just that you can only do 50 or 60K, and it's 30K away from me. So. Oh,
it's 419 meters in elevation. So
you go 1,300 feet. So yeah, it's good. It's a good grind, and yeah, no, it's fun. I like it. And a little bit technical, so it keeps it interesting, and yeah, it's fun. So
cool.
So we're at episode 81. This is a great podcast. We sit down with Kristy, Titus. We've been trying to get in touch with Kristy. We had it lined up for Sheep Week, and then Sheep Week for me, and certainly for someone like Kristy. Kristy is like they're meeting with all kinds of different people, and it just was and then you couldn't get down there. So anyway, we ended up binning it, unfortunately. But yeah, it's great that we finally connected, and it's crazy how knowledgeable she is about Canadian issues, right? Like she knew all about 7B. She knew all about
what we're dealing with the firearms.
Yeah, firearm stuff, grizzly bear stuff. Yeah, she was super knowledgeable, and kind of blew me out of the water how much she knew about everything. So
it was great. It ended up being pretty emotionally charged there near the middle. So, but it was good chat, and yeah, as you said, very, very knowledgeable. And just, it was a great episode and well worth the wait, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed it. I just love talking about it because it was, some pretty thought-provoking stuff, right? And, we talked a little bit about the benefits of, wildlife management and the North American wildlife model and why it's so important. So, yeah, really cool topics that we explored. Talked a little bit about Africa, the controversies and challenges, and why hunting is important in Africa. I'd really love to get some really knowledgeable people like Kristy and others that could sit down and talk about hunting in Africa. I think that's an important long discussion. But again, we're kind of talking to the echo chamber again, right? We're just telling other hunters why it's important, and they already know. So the hard part is trying to get that in front of the audience that doesn't normally listen to our stuff.
Exactly. So, We're a month out from sheep season. That means we're what, 6 weeks, give or take, for Jurassic?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this will release mid-July roughly, and,
So, yeah.
and Jurassic's early August. So
So,
yeah, we'll be 3 to 4 weeks at that point.
okay,
And
Lord.
that weekend, we're going to draw our membership drive winner. So you'll hear on this podcast, Kristy's going to talk about why it's important to join these groups, why it's important to have a voice. And so this is kind of our call to action for you, our listeners. If you're not a member, think about buying a membership. It's $55 a year. If you buy an auto renew, it's $55 a year. That's like 3 times to Starbucks or Tim Hortons. pick one, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost inexpensive. It's inexpensive. It's almost free. But what it does is it gets you a voice, right? And when we go to the government to advocate for wildlife, for management changes to help wildlife, to advocate for hunters, now we have a voice because we have a strong membership. So, this is kind of our call to action for our listeners. Consider joining us. Pick up a membership, and basically costs you nothing. And we got this cool membership drive that we got going on right now. So you might win something, and we got like a couple grand in prizes, right?
Mm-hmm.
We got what's first place?
Sturgeon trip on the Lower Fraser. That'd be awesome if you've never hooked into a sturgeon. It is a fight like you have never felt before. Even if you don't fish, I took a buddy of mine, Don, a couple of years ago. I bought a trip, and it never appealed to him. And we were 20 minutes into the first set, and boom, he had a 6-foot fish on, and he was hooked, and absolutely loves it and wants to go back. So yeah, we got that, which is donated by Wood Wheaton Super Center, Don. And what's second prize? It's a knife.
Yeah, it's a knife from Frontier Men's Gear. Tanner stepped up with that, so really, really sweet knife from him for second prize. Yeah, exactly. And then a swag pack for third. So
absolutely,
tons of giveaways. So if you're a member, you can up your membership. You can renew, add a year to your membership. It all gets you entries into the draw, and we're going to draw that in the second week of August and give that away to 3 lucky winners. And yeah, so this is your time. If I'm going to advocate for anything, get involved just to support the cause, right? Like, so that we have podcasts like this. We do our advocacy work for wild sheep and wildlife in BC. We put money on the ground. What's our number? What have we spent in the last 3.5 years, Steve?
Oh, it was damn near $1 million, wasn't it?
Yeah, $1 million.
Something like 978 or something, 978,000, something like that.
Exactly. So, join our membership, and then you can sit there and say, "Hey, I'm part of an organization that put $1 million for wildlife in British Columbia." That's a pretty cool thing.
In 3 years. The way I look at it is I've never even hunted a sheep, and I just got my third life member plaque from organizations across North America, and it's easy. The way I justified it the first couple of times with just buying a membership is I'm buying a sheep tag and then doubling it, right? So it's the cost of a sheep tag a year. What, $50? Is that what a sheep tag costs? Yeah. Something like that. I never even paid attention.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
just add it on. You can make those payments just once a year, as Kyle said. What, three Starbucks trips?
Yeah, it's dirt cheap, and you're supporting a organization that's looking out for your interests, right? We're truly out there advocating for wildlife and wild sheep. So awesome. Okay, if you want to sign up, just over to wildsheepsociety.com, and it's all there. Just click on the membership link, and you can read all about it. So with that, we're off to episode 81 with Kristy Titus. This is a great listen. Enjoy, and thanks for listening.
The perception of hunting, has changed. It's our duty now, our responsibility as hunters, to change it back. And we've spent the last few decades trying, espousing that message, preaching that message about wildlife conservation. It's fallen on deaf ears, all of our attempts. I think what we have to do is maybe appeal to the emotional side or the visceral side. We have to tell our story. We know what we are. We know how deeply we care about wildlife. It's just the people out there that are voting to get rid of hunting, they don't understand our stories. Sometimes we have to translate it to something that they understand.
Good afternoon, Kristy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you guys for being so patient and having me on, like 6 months in the making, I think now.
Yeah, that's right. We were working on Sheep Week, but this worked out for the best. Steve ended up not making it to Sheep Week because he was COVID scared, or COVID. Well, he couldn't get across the border, one of those things. So, so this worked out really well. Thanks for sticking with us and making it come together.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm glad to be on. Thank you guys.
Great. So let's just get caught up in your world. What was shaken for the spring? What did you get out and do for your spring season?
So I had kind of an interesting spring. I went to Hawaii for my first axis deer hunt. And that was really fun. And arguably the best meat I've ever consumed, in my wild game life. It's so good. It's incredible. So I had just a beautiful trip to Hawaii. And then followed it up with, turkey season in Oregon, where my husband and I were successful bow hunting turkeys. And then we moved to Wyoming. So that's been like the big, it's been the big spring thing.
Well, that's a pretty big spring, actually.
Yeah, no kidding.
Moving to Wyoming. So how does that look for public lands and stuff like that? For, like, obviously Wyoming's a mecca. Oregon was good too, obviously, but what about Wyoming?
No, Oregon sucks. So Oregon, the problem with Oregon is their game management's just really run by anti-science philosophies. It's all emotionally based game management, which leads to poor management practices when you don't follow the North American model and you listen to people that are emotionally charged. It leads to bad game numbers. And the ungulate population in Oregon is really, really suffered due to absolute terrible predator management. Wyoming, conversely, they've done a better job of managing their predators. For example, you can bait bears in the spring. You can not run bears with hounds, but you can bait them, which is a lot of fun and can be quite effective, especially when it comes to selective harvesting. And harvesting big, mature, old animals that are ready to, at that prime age to be harvested. So especially with predators, I'm really conscientious of age harvesting and selective harvesting, especially like for black bears specifically. So there's a lot of opportunity. I'm really fortunate that I have 4 years worth of preference points as a non-resident. So I'm able to cash those in this year. I drew an elk and a mule deer tag. And then next year I'll draw those tags over the counter as a Wyoming resident.
Oh, that sounds so familiar when it comes to the emotionally charged management up here in BC.
Oh boy.
We lost the grizzly hunt in 2017 based on populism. They said it. It's because of the votes. They're going to do what the voters want. And hell, was it last week you sent me a picture of a bus in Victoria, Kyle? A big slogan on the back, an anti-hunting, said "Stop the wolf hunt," and encouraging people to engage their elected officials regarding it. So yeah, we feel that one pretty hard up here in BC.
Well, and in Wyoming, they've even had that where they've stopped grizzly bear hunting and management here. And last week I read that there was some emotionally charged groups that are working to shut down bison hunting because the bison are coming out of Yellowstone as part of migration, and they have a very harvestable population where you can sustainably harvest and selectively harvest bison and keep those herd numbers healthy. And people are trying to shut that down now. So it's definitely an uphill battle. The problem with hunting and hunters is we're sometimes not quite vocal enough. And the antis swing a big stick, and they're very vocal with it, and they're very aggressive. And we could take a few field notes from that philosophy.
Yeah, and sometimes we get so emotionally charged the wrong way, we say the wrong things. And
Yeah.
that just the screenshots and the sound bites come back to nail us, right? When you see somebody saying, "Oh, kill them all," or "the only good wolf is a dead wolf," well, you know what?
The three S's.
Exactly. You just buried us. So
Yeah.
it's something we're all fighting, it seems.
Well, and we're fighting it everywhere. So like in Wyoming, it's a constitutional carry state, Second Amendment sanctuary here in the US, which you guys don't have that in Canada at all. And I received word last week through Firearms Policy Coalition that one of the senators here was kind of waffling on some of this red flag stuff. And I instantly started burning down phone lines and it's encouraging all of my followers that are from Wyoming, and then all of the people I know here personally received that particular senator's phone number. And you have to let them know that you want your rights protected, and at all costs, like we have to get involved. And making phone calls and writing letters is one of the ways that we can be heard. And the other way is by primarying these elected officials that start swinging in the wrong direction for our beliefs, and really lobbying to get candidates in to power or influence that truly represent our voice and where we stand on things. And that's again, an uphill battle as well. It's easier said than done.
So yeah, those are really good points, and it's something that is a real problem here in British Columbia and in Canada. So provincially, the anti-hunting movement, and of course other provinces in Canada too. But then federally, we've got a prime minister that's not he's not too keen on guns, and there's gun control stuff. It's changing literally daily.
Well, and he went from a couple of years ago saying Canadians' guns are safe to last week saying, Canada, you don't have the right of personal protection the way Americans do. Like, are you kidding me? It's a God-given right to live, the God-given right to life, and you should be able to defend your life. And that just blew my mind when he was saying that. He is an absolute traitor to your country. But you're not alone in that.
Yeah, no, it is alarming, some of the rhetoric that we're hearing, and the laws and things are changing so quickly right now. And so I guess that, with that in mind, you talked about some really great strategies there, but I feel like we're not doing enough, right? And we're not being, and sure, loud enough is part of it, and elected officials and engagement, all that stuff's really important. But what can we do better? Like, I think we're going to have to be a bit more resourceful. I feel like we're falling short that, okay, we can up the rhetoric. We can, vote for the right people, but, depending on who's in power, and we know what you guys are dealing with, what we're dealing with here, just some of the laws and decisions that are being made are not in our best interests. And sometimes we don't have control of that. I think if as gun owners or, hunters, if we just got our act together and started singing from the same song sheet, we'd do a heck of a lot better. But we seem to struggle in that area. And you've seen it. You've been in the community long enough to have seen it. Like, where's this disconnect? And because these things are all near and dear to us, and we're kind of losing in some pretty big things pretty quickly, certainly here in Canada. But thoughts on that?
It's crazy. If you look at some of the policies and the talking points or narratives that these groups come up with, whether it's something you're hearing on mainstream news or in an anti-hunting forum, they come up with like a sheet of talking points, and these people lockstep. And they preach the same narrative. And as the narrative evolves, their dialogue evolves, but it's so synergistic. And it's really strange to me how the conservatives and science-based wildlife management model individuals, we just haven't done that. We haven't talked about the good that comes from guns, like how in the United States, the Pittman-Robertson Act is funding majority of conservation efforts nationwide. And so you don't talk about it, and you don't see these things that are like, hey, guns do good things. Let's talk about that. Hunters double down when they buy hunting licenses and tags by funding 75% of statewide conservation budgets in the United States. Not sure how that works in Canada. I would presume it's pretty similar. And then on top of that, we're funding tourism in just a tremendous area where it's like rural communities that don't have a lot of industry, don't have a lot of jobs, we're jobs creating and fueling economies that without us wouldn't even exist. And somehow we just managed to foobar this and not all preach the same tune, and that's not even talking about the North American model of wildlife conservation, which is to this day in history the most effective model of wildlife conservation, and it is the model that the rest of the world aspires to kind of replicate. But we're just terrible at telling the story about how we are true stewards of the land and the true first crusaders of conservation. And I think a lot of it is people don't understand how hunting is conservation in the first place. And it's just getting people interested, because it's not exactly the sexiest topic unless you find some emotional attachment to it. And I think we have to take the fact that we take our rights for granted right now. And as we see them slip away, we become more in tune with the value of them. I mean, I think we saw it a lot with COVID too, where we weren't able to travel between Canada and the US. We weren't able to travel internationally the way we have in the past. We were locked down. And if you didn't live in an area where you had access to public land or wild places or spaces, it was a suffocating, emotionally debilitating time that really affected a lot of people and communities. And it just teaches us how valuable what we have is, and it is worth defending.
Yeah, and there's so many things I want to touch on there, but the one thing I want to hit on first, and the point that you brought up, is this lockstep and the synergistic view. I don't know what you said there, but it was a great word. That the sort of the anti-hunting community has, and one thing I see, and it drives me crazy, is that as hunters, there's this fractured group that there's and even gun owners, for example, where like, oh well, and we see this in Canada, like, handguns are under threat here in Canada, right? Well, I don't have a handgun anyway, so I don't really care. It's like they don't have that mentality. Well, yeah, they came for the handgun, but what's next? Like, mm-hmm. And same thing with hunters, right? We see this, and I'm sure you see it through your platforms, and people are like, oh, you shouldn't be hunting. And these are hunters. It's one thing for an anti-hunter or even a non-hunter, but hunters like, well, you shouldn't have been hunting grizzly bear anyway, mm-hmm. or you shouldn't be able to hunt that with archery or a crossbow or whatever. Everyone has their sort of niche, and there's we have to look at this as a community. And I think that's where we've fallen short in the hunting and gun world, is that we just don't have a community of people there's so many people pitted against it. With the grizzly bear, when they took it away in Canada, people went, oh, well, there's only 5,000 tags or whatever that British Columbians, that's only 5%. So who cares? It's just grizzly bears, right? Mm-hmm. And now they're after other things. So, so I guess how do we do a better job? And, and I look to someone like you yourself, Kristy, because you're a leader in our space. How can we unite that groundswell of people that are out there that, but we can never get on the same page. And that drives me insane that we don't. It's just, this goes and that goes, and people are just, whatever.
I don't think there's an easy answer for that. I think it goes down to, if you're a hunter and you buy a hunting license or a tag, or you enjoy shooting sports, you should be involved. And we owe it to the wildlife and wild places that we venture into, and those things that we enjoy doing, that we are involved in the politics of it. And it is really sad also in Canada. You guys are seeing your government negotiate with the Native Americans of Canada a lot of your hunting rights based on their desire to extrapolate fossil fuels and have rights to resources that the state, or I should say the country, wants, and they're willing to sign away the rights of the citizen and to be able to hunt in order to get their own personal gain. And so that's tough when you're battling a government that's serving its own interest and not the interest of the people necessarily. It's a really tough fight. And it goes back to limiting government and having great elected officials and being involved in the political process. And a lot of people don't want to bother with getting involved in politics because it's not their wheelhouse, but there's a place for everyone to be involved in politics. You just have to figure out where yours is.
Yeah, well said. And interesting that you're obviously super knowledgeable about what's going up here in Canada. And that's the thing too. With you talked about what's going on with First Nations and government giving things away based on has nothing to do with reconciliation or what the first trying to make things right with First Nations. It has to do with resource extraction and a whole bunch of other things. And science-based wildlife management is nowhere in that mix.
It's not in the conversation anywhere at all.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, it's unbelievable. And that's what just is so frustrating.
It's really hard when your government is self-serving, and the United States is no better. I mean, I'm going to shine a bright light on our government either. It is really tough when they're self-serving, and they're not looking at the overall picture. I mean, we're dealing with it with our oil right now and energy issues, which is causing massive crises across the country that are completely avoidable. So, there's no easy answer to any of this. It's just that all of us have a personal stake in the outcomes of these decisions that are made for us by our respective governments.
Oh, we saw it this morning that Kyle got kind of alluded to. Our government shut down debate on Bill C-21, which is the act regarding firearms and amendments, in less than 3 hours. They said no more, no debates, and so they can't even be thrown back and forth in the House. And it just came out that the RCMP commissioner, and quote, tried to jeopardize mass murder investigation to advance Trudeau's gun control efforts. Admits it. So how is that what's best for the country when you're making personal agendas and personal battles? So yeah, it's screwed everywhere. It's
a tough time in our world right now. It's not easy, and it's not getting easier. And they're trying to normalize things that aren't normal, and it's just degrading our economy, our culture, and there's a massive shift, and we have to learn to really lockstep and say, no, this is what's right, this is what's ethical, this is what follows science-based management philosophies, this is what's best for our trees and our forests and our water, sustainable resources, renewable resources, and truly teach what it is to be a steward of wild places.
Yeah, well said. So let's jump on that train for a little bit. Talk a little bit about science-based wildlife management, North American wildlife model. So you talked about. Let's talk about Oregon specifically. Mm-hmm. So, we've looked at some of the funding models, and one thing in British Columbia that we get run over on the bus every day by is we're severely underfunded. We look at jurisdictions like Oregon, Wyoming. They're killing us in per capita spending on wildlife management. British Columbia is abysmal when it comes to that.
They don't have the populations either. I mean, Oregon has 4.5 million people in the state of Oregon alone. I mean, what is the population of BC? I don't know if it even comes close to that.
It's similar, but the issue is, if you break it down on a per capita basis, we're not even close. And the thing is we are in a serious biodiversity hotspot. It doesn't get any better for wildlife than BC in theory. Like, there's lots of great jurisdictions, but British Columbia is good, but there's just no money here for it. And wildlife does not pay its way, and it's not. And we don't have a Pittman Robertson. We don't have any of that. We have no matches as a general rule. So we're severely underfunded. So that's why I want to talk about Oregon. So the money. There's more money in Oregon than there is here in BC, but yet the young populations are low. Is it because of predator management? What is some of the core issues in Oregon that you've seen?
Well, predator management is a huge issue. I mean, obviously, our predator season for spring black bears is a draw in most units. It's difficult to draw at spot and stock only. You're not allowed to use hounds. They banned using hounds. They banned using bait. And so I don't know. I mean, black bears are the most difficult animal to judge for age, size, maturity. And, people say, well, you're baiting a bear and it's so easy to just go shoot a bear. Well, it might be easy to go harvest a young bear off a bait. It's very difficult to harvest a big, mature, age-appropriate bear off a bait, and they are a very challenging hunt and a very challenging target. But by using take methods like baiting, it allows you to selectively harvest the right animals. And so I think, Oregon's bear population is so out of control that you have a spring season and a fall season. In the units where they allow spring season, a sow bear can be taken even with cubs as long as they're at least a year old. So they have such a population explosion of predators that you can harvest a sow bear with yearling cubs at her side, and basically leave her cubs to self-sustain themselves at as little of a year old, which is a crazy management practice that I don't know any other state that really allows. I'm not either for nor against it. Hey, the bears are out of control in population, and if that's how Oregon's going to manage them, then that's whatever. By diminishing the resources that hunters have as tools to selectively harvest really affects the age class that's taken. The other main issue is the mountain lions. So on my farm in particular, I had 60 acres. 10 minutes out of town, I was on the edge of a very kind of populated community. There was over 500 homes that had joined my ranch. Like I said, I only had 60 acres. It wasn't huge, but I had joined some public land and some bigger ranches. I had 5 mule deer killed on my farm in a 2.5 year span within 100 yards of my home by mountain lions. So the predation problem is very significant. There's no real feasible way to hunt them because you can't use dogs. So mountain lions are extremely nocturnal. They're very, very elusive. To combat that, Fish and Game has done dumb things like, I wouldn't say they're dumb, but it's just not effective. If you see a mountain lion and you have 2 tags, if they're in a family unit, you can shoot more than one as long as the young don't have spots. So let's say you see a female lion with a cub or 2, you could selectively harvest 2 of the 3 if you had 2 tags in your pocket. So, they're begging for management to be done in really non-traditional ways, but they're not effective anyway, because how often are you seeing these big cats? I lived at my home and never saw any of the mountain lions that killed the deer on my ranch. And to be honest with you, I never got a trail camera photo of them. I saw lion tracks and never got a trail camera photo. They actually were killing dogs in my neighborhood, and my neighborhood would have these neighborhood watch signs up where mountain lions spotted, keep your dogs indoors or on leash when they're outside. And it was like a big situation. But what that's done to our deer populations, for example, where I moved into my place, I had 6 young bucks every fall that would winter at my house, and all ages. And when this mountain lion in particular figured out because I added water source and I added some habitat for these deer, once this lion or these lions figured out the movement of the deer through my property, it was just a straight slaughter for them. And they would wait for the deer to water and they would kill them at water, or they would wait for them to walk by a mineral station and they'd slaughter them over my minerals. And so these lions got very, very efficient at hunting and killing in my yard, literally in my yard. They're going in Oregon and they're hiring professional I guess predator management teams where they have their own hounds, and they're paying these people hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars to go in and slaughter mountain lions, which they need to be taken. However, they're removing the opportunity for a hunter like myself to actually pay the state for the opportunity to selectively harvest these animals over dogs. Harvest the meat, take the trophy home. And a lot of people say, well, you can't eat mountain lion. Well, mountain lion is fantastic eating. So they're doing things and they're doing it under the radar of anti-hunters. So, if anti-hunters think that mountain lion hunting is being shut down in a state like Oregon, they're not protesting it. So when they have massive problems and massive depredation problems in units like the Steens, they go in and they hire these government people that under the radar take these animals out of the population, they kill them, and they're basically wasted. And it's a complete disservice to the animal and the opportunity of a hunter to fulfill the model.
Yep. Again, it's like looking in a mirror. What was it, Kyle? 3 years ago, 4 years ago, Haida Gwaii, the government spent almost $6 million to bring in New Zealand sharpshooters in helicopters to shoot deer instead of just opening up a little bit more, a little bit. It's ridiculous. And about the lions, a friend of mine, I'm in the middle of BC, so fairly rural, but not overly. And she lives 15 minutes west of me on 5 acres. And I got a call at about 8 o'clock in the morning saying, my miniature horse is missing. Can you come help? We think something got it, because I do a lot of predator control, and found it along a shared fence line, and it was partially buried. And I said, okay, this is a mountain lion. And they put a trail camera on it. And within 20 minutes of that trail camera being activated, they were getting pictures of this cat on it. And it was huge. And this is in an area where kids go to school. They take the school buses, and there's constantly lions in this little corridor, and we're dealing with wolves here.
Well, you have that in BC. Just outside of your guys' park there by Invermere. You guys have a school, and there's a school, and it's got a chain link fence around the whole school, and the wolves literally are running that river bottom within 100 yards of the school, and they're just depredating all of the deer. A lot of your sheep are now living on golf courses in town because that's the only place they can find safety. Your elk are in town on golf courses, again, for safety. And it's crazy how effective at hunting wolves have become.
Absolutely.
Unreal.
Absolutely. I found a little graphic that we put together a few years ago talking about the funding that we put into wildlife here. So let's look at Washington State. They give roughly $21.67 per person to wildlife. Montana, $69.34. Idaho, $64.87. BC, $7.36. And that works out to $36 a square kilometer, when Idaho's $488, Oregon's $701, Washington's $831. So we're vastly underfunded here, and we know why. Wildlife's not a priority. It's unless you're voting on it.
So, Kristy, you talked about the government making these decisions to restrict predator hunting, and then we look at states now, Washington with the spring bear. In California they keep pushing, and fortunately hunters have pushed back. But what is the logic there? Like, it's one thing if okay, we're just going to let nature take its course, but then they go in and they're having to manage it anyway. It just I don't understand the logic there that this is happening. And like you said, they're paying people to remove black bears in Oregon, right? It just
mountain lions primarily, yeah.
Oh, sorry, mountain lions.
So the issue is people are like, well, let's let nature take its course. Okay, so imagine in BC at large, prior to man. You guys have very mountainous, very rugged terrain. The snowfall gets very deep. So imagine a wolf pack running in the mountains that is trudging through 3 or 4 feet of snow. The amount of energy that it takes them to travel a mile is very great. The amount of range that they can travel in a day is limited by their energy resources. And so that terrain, that snow would limit their energy resources and their effectiveness at killing and hunting. Insert man, we have logging roads everywhere, skid roads everywhere, mining roads everywhere. They're maintained by oil and gas. They're maintained by the lumber industry. They're maintained by access to private property all winter long. These wolves use roads the way we do to drive, and they run them like a freeway. There is no energy barriers for them. They're not overcoming hardship the way they used to. So when people say we need to let them do their thing and be wild, well, that only works if it's in a place that's truly wild. Once man inserts himself and they change the effectiveness that this animal can hunt and move and navigate a mountain, it changes the dynamic of the predator-prey relationship. And once we do that, which we've done virtually every landscape, we have to be a part of the management process.
Yeah, well said, for sure. And we see it. And it's interesting, they say, well, we'll prove that this works. And we have proved it in BC here. We've got some caribou on the verge of extirpation. Well, in the south, we know what happened, but in the north as well. And we've seen literally significant increases in caribou after wolf management in those jurisdictions. So the science does support it. It's not just a theory. It's actually proven, right? So yeah, it's incredible. Pretty frustrating to see that there's an argument against it.
They argue the science isn't good. That's the worst part about it. It's, well, let's make a science to fit an agenda, but we can.
Well, and that's when you talk about quote unquote the science, what you really have to do is follow the checkbook. Who's funding it? Where's the money coming from? And it's really difficult for a lot of studies to not have a slant. The only thing that the North American model is irrefutable is that our numbers have increased. Deer numbers, turkey numbers, elk numbers, moose numbers. Our wildlife numbers are stronger now than they've ever been because of this North American model of wildlife conservation. They can't argue the statistical number that how the landscape of wildlife has changed since the late 1930s compared to today. The proof is out there. It's irrefutable.
Well, and that's the challenge that we're faced with. So one of the narratives that we're hearing here is, we always argue the North American model, blah, 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 blah. Same thing. We've always stayed the course. Now we're actually hearing that people don't support that model, and that it should be based on emotion, we always point to that, right? And well, this works. But actually people are now questioning the model. And that's pretty scary when we think this is such a fundamental model. It's worked so well. And it, like you said, we've got proof of it. And pick a species. It goes on and on and on and on. When you apply that model to that species, it works. It changes things. And the problem is now, the big narrative here that we're hearing all the time is they want to manage based on emotion. What's ethically right, not what's best for science. And we all know where that goes, right?
Yeah, it goes to deteriorating our rights and in the right. Well, they want to develop animal personhood, which is terrifying. In the U.S., actually, they just lost a big case on that regarding some elephants, and where there was a lawsuit that was trying to give these elephants animal personhood. And that's the next big thing that's really scary that a lot of these groups are trying to do is, imagine a law case, bald eagle versus United States government. I mean, they're trying to give animals personhood. And that is the next scary, crazy thing that is we're going to start seeing. And that was just shot down in the U.S. this week, which is a huge win for everyone, and including the animals, because to have a group being the voice of an animal that literally does not have their own voice is going to lead us down a very horrible path.
Yeah, it's definitely terrifying when you think about it. Okay, let's segue a little bit here. Let's talk a little bit about hunting. We've talked a little bit about politics and all that sort of stuff, and that we could talk more and more on that.
Let's talk until we smash our faces against the wall, because that's what it feels like most of the time, right? This is so simple.
Okay, I get
everybody to make this so hard.
I guess that's one thing I'll challenge you and Steve too is, we've talked about this and the issue, is there something that we can do differently? It's interesting. I had a discussion with Renee Thornton from Women Hunt from Wild Sheep Foundation, and she was just saying to us is that, she was talking to Gray Thornton about this, and that, if we could just get on the same page, if we could bring somebody could bring us all together and get all our organizations and all hunters, and we're all singing, like you said, lockstep. That was you used that word several times earlier. Things would definitely be different if we actually all spoke from the same notes, and we all had the same approach, and we all support each other the way we need to do it. So, is there a different, and I know you do a great job, you do a great job of bringing people together, and your messaging is very sound, yet we're still such a fractured group. So I guess that's I challenge you guys. What can we do differently to sort of stem the tide of, letting groups speak for eagles or whatever, like this animal personhood or personal animalhood or whatever it is. So, yeah,
it's a tough one. You know that I battle daily with it, and you touched on it earlier, where we need to stop bashing somebody who's a crossbow hunter if you're an archery hunter, if somebody is a black powder rifle shooter versus a long distance shooter. We all want the same thing, and that's abundant wildlife that keeps prospering on the landscape and a habitat that continues to thrive for our grandkids. We need to throw out the egos, right? And what I do is better than you do. And hell, you see it all the time. People bash the newest caliber exclusive, right now the target is the 6.5 Creedmoor. Everybody knows there's memes everywhere about that. And why? Because they marketed it correctly. It's not because it's not a capable round, or the person behind it doesn't know what they're doing. It becomes a trend. You know what I mean? We're seeing it all over British Columbia as well. With unfortunately, there was a ton of sheep that were shot last year due to them being either short or underage. Why is that? We had a chat with a couple of people saying, well, is it for the gram? Right. And again, that goes back to ego. And if we could go back to 30 years ago, it was commonplace to see granddad driving down the road with a deer on the hood of their car. And instead of getting the RCMP or whatever police district called on them, you got a high five and you got help loading it if need be. Right. You know what I mean? Now it's almost woke to judge it. I don't know. I could keep going. I could keep going about it, and you know me well enough to know that I'll keep ranting, Kyle. So I don't know. It's a tough one to bridge, and the minute we can all come together, politicians have said it many, many times. If all hunters got on the same page and used that voice collectively, we'd kick ass. We really, truly would. So it's just finding that little nugget of what we can all get around. And I think what it's going to be is, we've talked about it, something's going to have to be taken away that makes them go, oh shit, I didn't think they were going to do that. Right? Is it going to be rifles here in Canada? Because 2 years ago, I wrote an article for a magazine when they put in that proposed banning on what they called assault rifles. And everybody went, well, it's just assault rifles. That was the name of the article too. And I said, no, it's not. They're going to come for more because we're not all banding together. And Kyle touched on it with the grizzly hunt. Well, I don't hunt grizzlies. And here we are 2 years later. They're coming for more. Mm-hmm. So it's going to take some sort of shakeup like that.
Yeah, they're coming for your moose quotas now.
Exactly. They did it. They did it in Region 7B.
Yeah.
Right. They yanked the moose. But what have we heard here? Well, I don't hunt up there anyway. So
yeah,
it's
scary.
It's gonna take something like that where people are gonna go, uh-oh. So, oh well. Over to you, Kyle.
Yeah, you look like you're deep in thought there, Kristy.
It's just so hard. It's so frustrating, and you feel powerless, which is sad. But unfortunately, all of us have to harness our own individual power. Instead of feeling powerless, we have to accumulate strength and continue the fight.
I think that's the key takeaway, right? Is, you do such a great job on your platform and through your channels. And I think we each have to take that a personal responsibility and, do our, engage with the government, stand up for what we believe in, but also encourage our fellow, gun owners and hunters and friends, and educate our friends too, right? Like, you and I know, if you sit down and have dinner with somebody or you share some wild meat with somebody, they get it and they're like, oh, you're not so bad. You're not the big bad hunter that I thought you were. But, and if all of us did that all the time, it would never be an issue. The problem is lots of people don't do it. And I could do better too. I'm not saying that I'm setting the example for what it should be, but I think we could do a better job of that outreach. But also as hunters, like all of us have to do our part, not just you and Steve and I, and there's lots doing it, but more need to do it, I think. So, yeah. Okay, let's talk hunting. So now you've kind of done it all. You've been to Africa, recently Hawaii, axis deer, now your favorite wild meat. What is a highlight? What is your go-to hunt? Like, what is the most memorable hunt that you have ever been on, period, hands down?
Oh, well, so for me, I don't think anything beats archery elk hunting. So, I mean, I have a really tough time. It's a very nostalgic hunt for me. I love calling elk. And that's just like, if I had to sum up all of my greatest moments in the woods, they tend to lead back to elk hunting.
Awesome. And Oregon's solid, right? They have solid elk opportunity, right?
Yeah, they have a great elk population. Oregon. So one of the reasons I moved out of Oregon is they have moved their archery seasons, which used to have an abundance of kind of general over-the-counter areas for archery, where you could go and hunt annually in kind of a roughly close proximity to where you live. To last year, they made almost the entire state a draw, and they did it for elk and deer. Like, for me to hunt archery elk where I used to live is now a 3-year wait for preference points, and to rifle hunt that same unit is 8+ years. So it just wasn't, I mean, why would you live in a state that you can hunt feasibly every 3 to 8 years, depending on your weapon of choice? Oregon has great elk numbers. Yes. Oregon's hunting opportunities are becoming more challenging.
So now you said with Wyoming, you're going to get drawn as a non-resident this year, and then next year you'll be able to, can you draw every year in Wyoming? Or?
Yeah, there's over 50 units that you can hunt with a general tag in Wyoming as a resident annually. So that's, one of the main reasons that my husband and I chose to move here. It's a freedom, living state, and, lots of opportunity for residents.
Awesome.
Because there's not a lot of people here. I mean, the state population's like 500,000 people. So there's not a lot of humans here either. There's more antelope here than there are people.
Yeah. Which is pretty cool, right? Like, when you go antelope hunting, where do you go? You go to Wyoming, right? Like, it's such a great state for that. And
I drew an Oregon antelope tag this year, and it took me 16 years to get the tag.
Wow. So that's crazy.
Yeah. It goes a lot to agency management and management practices as well. So mismanagement.
Yeah. So have you thought of, you do a lot on the, getting very involved, very vocal. Have you ever thought about getting more involved, like running for state, doing stuff like that, stepping up more, or not really?
Heavens no. No, I want nothing to do with that. No, I don't. I have no political aspirations other than just being active and representing my values to the people that are elected to do the job, which is to represent us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. Well said. So, okay, this fall you got elk and mule deer. What else is on the agenda?
So antelope in Oregon. My husband and I drew an archery elk tag in Oregon, which is a 3-year draw. Don't know that we're going to go back there and hunt elk. I drew Wyoming elk. I drew Wyoming deer. I drew Oregon deer. My dad had 16 years worth of points that we shared and were able to draw a tag. Again, just such limited opportunities to hunt there. And, the sad thing with like Oregon with deer is that there's not like a unit where you're like, oh, if I put in for unit 12, which is just a fake number. If I put in for unit 12, you're going to see, trophy quality deer, high age class. Oregon doesn't have like one specific unit where you can find that. It's so poorly managed that you could potentially find a big deer in almost any unit potentially, but there's not one unit that really is a standout. Like a lot of states have, kind of those standout areas that are known for, great opportunity to harvest an older class animal. And so we drew, we put in together as a party and drew deer. And then I'll hunt Kansas for whitetail, Missouri for whitetail, maybe Texas for aoudad. So got a pretty awesome season. I'm going to do archery elk in Colorado. We'll see what happens beyond that. It's a lot of hunting.
That sounds pretty busy, actually. Yeah. Awesome. So is there kind of a bucket list to hunt? Like you've done Africa, you've hunted sheep, I think goat. So is there something you have an itch to do, or something you really like? Obviously you talked about you love elk, but anything that stands out that you really want to go do?
Oh, I have a million things that I want to do. That's a really tough one. So I have harvested a moose. I would love to have the opportunity at a monster moose. I mean, with a bow, a monster moose would be awesome. Brown bear is kind of on my short list right now in Alaska. Next year I'll be leopard hunting in Namibia. And so it's interesting. I'm going to an area in Namibia that was it's low fence, no fence area that was formerly only for photo safaris. And so for the last, I don't know, recent number of years, 10 plus years, it's been sustaining the wildlife through photo safari. And basically that was not a sustainable financial model. And the other issue they were having is wildlife management issues. And so that area was opened up last year to sustainable wildlife management practices, which include hunting. And so I get to go and hunt leopard in an area next year that hasn't been hunted apart from, the last 12 months respectively. I think they've taken 2 or 3 cats out of the area, leopards out of the area. So that'll be a really neat experience, a true wild experience. And then, we'll be able to see on the ground, what lack of hunting is done and kind of tell on that story. But the main issue with lack of hunting over there is there's no funding for management. And so you end up seeing not only local populations with humans that suffer because they don't get the meat coming into their communities or their villages as a resource, but also the wildlife numbers suffer through mismanagement or lack of management at all. And then, no funding to combat anti-poaching efforts. So I'm kind of interested. I'm thankful that some of these countries or regions are waking up and kind of realizing that hunting is a vital part of management around the globe and not just not just here. So I'm going to do that next year. That's a really I think it's going to be a powerful story. And I've got Fannin sheep is on the short list as well. So I'd like to be going to the Yukon. I've got one kind of reserved for 2025 for Fannin ram. So you guys as residents get to hunt stone sheep for $50. It's not quite that cheap for Americans. So I'm going to go look for a Fannin ram in 2025.
Well, it's actually quite a bit more for us to go. I think, was it $60 or 80?
Yeah. $60 or $80. I think
it's like 60.
Stone sheep in the US now is pushing $70,000.
It's crazy. I seen a cancellation hunt with Tashodi River in BC, and it was $60,000 US. What on a cancellation hunt? Yeah. It's like, wow, that's phenomenal. So, yeah, no, it's not for the faint of heart for sure. And I don't take it for granted. I think it's a pretty big privilege that we get to do that. And, but that said, that's 60 Canadian, so that's like 30 US almost.
I don't think so. Have you seen inflation in the United States? We're like 9% is what they're publishing, and it's worse than that.
Yeah, it's not good here either. No. Yeah, same thing. Okay, so you talked about Africa a little bit. Have you done a podcast on hunting in Africa, and not about the hunt itself, but the benefits of hunting in Africa? Have you had that? Because that's such an important discussion, and you touched on all the big points, but hunting in Africa is such a nuanced discussion, and it's very appropriate for a podcast. Have you ever done anything on that? Talked about it?
When I was in South Africa last time, we had every intention of doing that, and we just kind of ran out of time. I've produced a series of episodes that kind of speak to that, not so much a podcast format. So like if you were to watch my kudu episode, which I'm re-airing in a couple of weeks, it talks about sustainable harvest, and it shows, the old kudu bull that I took wouldn't have survived their winter. He was very thin, very poor. His horn had broken half from fighting. And their dry season is incredibly hard on those old bulls, especially kudu are really, I would tend to say on the frail side of ungulates over there. And so the bull I harvested, it was really cool. We were privileged with having packers be able to come in, and this group of men literally took every piece of the animal apart from the insides of its stomach. And we did some cool time lapses of them processing and packing off the entire animal. And I mean, there was not an ounce of that animal that was wasted. In that meat, we showed it kind of field to fork, and we took the meat or some of the meat to a local orphanages because there's a pretty significant population of kids there that are orphans, in part due to the HIV and AIDS pandemic that they have in a lot of those countries where the kids are, basically orphaned at very young ages because of that disease or that series of diseases. So, and there's a lot of fatherlessness in homes there. So we did that whole field to fork story, and I've got a whole, series of episodes that is coming out in part, kind of sharing that information.
That's awesome. I look forward to checking that out for sure, because that's such an important message that people just totally, what makes the headlines in the U.S. is Cecil, right? It's, and the real story about conservation and talking to, local. It's interesting that I'm seeing now in the UK that Ricky Gervais was getting into some hot water because it's like, there's traditional hunting in Africa and indigenous peoples. And they're saying, well, this is how we do it. And then, Ricky was beating up on hunting in Africa, right? And they're saying, it's basically discriminating against First Nations rights and that sort of thing. So it was interesting to see that develop. But so
I think
Kristy,
I think some of the misconceptions with countries like South Africa, for example, is people think that everywhere's like the US and Canada, where there's wildlife, wild places, wild spaces that you hold as common public land. People make that mistake in thinking that the privilege that we have here is a universal privilege. It's not. In a lot of countries like South Africa, almost, if not all, the land is privately held. And so the wildlife that is on those lands, in that country in particular, is often high fenced. And those wild animals actually, for the most part, exist because they are bred by people that want to see the continuation of that particular population of animal. And they provide the habitat and the resources for those animals to survive privately. It's not a government program. It's not government dollars. It's not coming from taxpayers. It's a very private funded privilege. And so people here don't understand that. And they think, well, why can't people go hunt their own animals? Well, because there's no public land in that particular country. And those animals are owned privately by someone else. And if it weren't for private resource stewardship with wildlife and wild places there, they wouldn't exist at all. So it's just because people haven't necessarily visited a lot of these places. There are wild places still in the continent of Africa. Don't get me wrong. There are very wild places that are self-sustaining. And then there's a lot of places that by and large are not self-sustaining, and they're sustained by people that really care for wildlife. And that would be hunters. Yeah,
for sure. Now it's interesting. You said in Namibia, because that was always the age-old thing. It's like, well, how do we fund wildlife management? How do we make sure that those animals are still there? Because a big part of these funding mechanisms is somebody coming in and spending X amount of dollars on a certain hunt and supporting those communities, and that meat stays in the community. But so you talked about the photo safari. Is that because that was always the argument. That was, oh no, this is the funding model that does work for it. So that there's a case where is that pretty common? I'm not very knowledgeable on that aspect of it.
Yeah, the revenue stream that comes from photo safaris is not a sustainable wildlife management funding tool. It just does not create enough cash revenue. People going to take photos of animals don't pay the same amount of money that people that go to sustainably harvest animals are paying. And there's not the whole economic and cultural benefit from a photo taken. When you harvest an animal by age, for example, like the kudu I took was very old. It would not have lived through the winter. It would have perished. So that animal, if it weren't for hunting, would have decomposed on the mountainside, not benefiting at all the community, versus having selective hunting come in, taking an old animal where the entire animal is used and it's nourishing its population, and creating a critical revenue resource for sustainable harvesting and practices that lead to good management. And it's just a whole cycle. And taking a photograph just doesn't do that.
Yeah, well said, for sure.
You can't eat
yeah,
a
it's
picture,
interesting. Yeah,
No,
you can't. Can you?
Nope.
Well, and it doesn't address all these other issues, right? Like problem wildlife, managing that, protecting your community, saving your
efforts, which are
crop.
huge.
Exactly. Yeah. So it just goes on and on and on. The list goes on and on and on. Yet, the stuff that makes the headlines is Cecil the Lion. Yeah. Like that story is never told. I guess it's just not sexy to tell that story.
Cecil the Lion was legally harvested.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, interesting. Okay, cool. Well, hey, we've taken almost an hour of your time. Let's talk about the show. What do people have to look forward to? What's coming up? What's on? You talked about the new miniseries of hunting in Africa. What's new coming out of your camp in the next little while?
I'm working with Wild TV right now to get my show airing in Canada. So
awesome.
I am really excited about that. So hopefully at some point soon, we'll be airing in Canada on Wild TV. And that's something I've been working on for a long time. It is a little bit of an effort because we have to re-edit my digital format and to extend the format length to fit the needs of the network. So we're working on that diligently to bring Pursue the Wild to Wild TV. So that's coming soon. I do have a new podcast. It's the Wild and Uncut podcast. So with my podcast, what I try to do is film on location. So if I'm at a trade show or a shooting event, a sporting event, or following like a hunt, just sit down and talk about it. Doing a lot of fun stuff. Like I was at the NRA annual meetings 2 weeks ago, and I filmed, they have a concealed carry fashion show. So I filmed that, and I had all the people when they come off the runway walk over and talk about the product they're showcasing. And so just doing tons of fun stuff for people to tune into and listen, whether it be about conservation, hunt reports, or follow-ups, great gear. And it's been a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it.
Very cool. Yeah, I was stoked when that came out, and such a cool platform and such a great extension of the show, right? Like the show's great and it's easy to consume and stuff, but for those longer conversations or for trying to get a better understanding, the podcast is always such a great platform for that. So yeah, very cool. So let's just one last thing before we go. Let's talk about conservation. Where does this drive for protecting your Second Amendment rights, for protecting wildlife, the North American wildlife management model? Where does that drive come from? Was that something you've had as a little kid? Was it raised, something instilled by your parents? Where did that come from?
I don't know. I've always been fascinated with culture. So when I was a little kid, I was playing. Well, I've always been on mules in the backcountry with my dad, like always. It's just part of what we've done. But when I was a little kid, I was playing and I found some Indian arrowheads and some artifacts. So I became really obsessed with cultures and studying cultures. And I just loved being outside and hunting. And so it was very important for me to become a steward of the land and to be involved in being the best caretaker I could. And so I've just been doing this my whole adult life. So I started with Safari Club International, working with them in my 20s. And one of the reasons, I work with conservation groups is because they do great things. SCI is, apart from the National Rifle Association here in the U.S., is the only nonprofit conservation group that has lobbyists in Washington, D.C. working on behalf of the hunters. So that is really important to me, is I should be a part of these organizations because they're looking out for us. And when we lockstep by joining an organization, we are collecting our voice, and that has power. When you take an organization that has 5 million members like NRA, or 250,000 members or 400,000 members, then you really become a collective power. And so, and your opinions as part of, the group that you work with matters. And so I think that's where it started with me, is that I just wanted to have my voice heard. And I actually went with SCI to Washington, D.C. and lobbied with them with some issues that were on the agenda at that time. Polar bear importation was one of them, which we obviously lost the battle on that one here in the U.S. But we're trying. We're in the good fight, and it's all we have is to join these groups and be involved.
Very exciting. Well, thank you, Kristy. Thank you for all you do to look after all those things that are important to most of us that listen to these type of podcasts, and we're just grateful for the messaging you put out there, and it was fun today to sit down and talk about some of these issues. Lots of times, and you're super knowledgeable on it, so it was fun to hit on all these points and get your perspective on them. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you guys having me on, and hopefully somebody's inspired to get involved that may be sitting on the fence thinking, well, it doesn't affect me, or what can I do? We all have a voice, we all have a purpose, and we all need to be involved.
Exactly.
Well said.